It actually lights up. The human brain is the most complex biological structure in the known universe. It is an electrical and chemical symphony operating through billions of neurons and trillions of synaptic connections. Up. These neurons communicate with one another using chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters, such as GBA, glutamate, dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, regulate everything from thought and emotion to movement, memory, and motivation. Alcohol, once introduced into this system, acts as a pharmacological disruptor. It doesn't simply relax or help you unwind. That's an oversimplification rooted in culture, not biology. Alcohol is a psychoactive substance. Lights up. It alters the chemistry of your brain in ways that are often invisible in the short term, but profoundly detrimental over time. The first target alcohol affects is GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA is the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It essentially puts the brakes on neural activity. When GABA levels rise, neural firing slows down. It actually lights up, which is why people often feel relaxed or sedated after consuming alcohol. But there's a catch. This rise in GABA isn't natural. Alcohol artificially increases GABA receptor activity, creating a sense of calm not earned through rest or relaxation, but forced through chemical manipulation. Alongside GABA, alcohol suppresses glutamate, the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter. Glutamate is essential for learning, memory formation, and synaptic plasticity. By suppressing glutamate activity, actually lights up, alcohol's your ability to form new memories, concentrate, or retain information. This is why blackouts occur. Glutamate transmission is impaired to such a degree that the hippocampus, the brain's memory center, cannot encode events into long-term storage. This dual action, boosting GABA and suppressing glutamate, creates a powerful sedative effect. It slows everything down, reflexes, processing speed, memory consolidation, and emotional regulation. The more you consume, the more disrupted your internal balance becomes. But here's where the real issue begins. The brain, recognizing this external interference, tries to restore equilibrium. It downregulates GABA receptors and upregulates glutamate receptors to compensate. This adjustment becomes problematic when the alcohol wears off. With less GABA activity and more glutamate activity than normal, you experience what is commonly known as a hangover. But from a neuroscientific standpoint, lights up. That hangover is actually a state of neurochemical withdrawal. The anxiety, the tremors, the irritability, the difficulty sleeping. These are not random symptoms. It actually lights up. They are the result of a brain to recalibrate its chemistry after being artificially thrown off course. Over time, with repeated alcohol use, these disruptions become more ingrained. The brain begins to operate in a state of chronic imbalance. Even when you're not drinking, your GABA and glutamate systems may remain dysregulated. This contributes to increased anxiety, difficulty focusing, low energy, and in more severe cases, dependency. The very systems that allow you to stay mentally sharp, emotionally resilient, and physically coordinated are slowly being rewired by alcohol. Not for your benefit, but against your best interests. Think about how that affects your day-to-day life. Your ability to stay disciplined, to show up with clarity, to learn a new skill, it actually lights up, to adapt in real time. All of it depends on optimal neurotransmission, and alcohol impairs that process. It actually lights up. It doesn't matter if you're a student trying to retain information, an athlete aiming to improve performance, or an entrepreneur working long hours. Every time you drink, you're inducing noise into the most finely tuned machine you have, your brain. The science is very clear on this point. Even moderate drinking, defined as 1 or 2 drinks per day, alters brain chemistry in ways that affect cognition, mood, and performance. And this isn't just temporary. Lights up. Neuroimaging studies have shown that regular alcohol use leads to measurable reductions in white and gray matter volume in critical regions of the brain. These are not just abstract findings. These are real, quantifiable changes that correlate with real-life deficits in decision-making, emotional stability, and mental energy. It's not about fear, awareness. The more you understand how alcohol interacts with your brain's chemistry, the more empowered you become. You begin to realize that every choice you make, especially the substances you put into your body, either supports or sabotages your neurological potential. Actually lights up. At the core of every human transformation, whether it's learning a new skill, changing a habit, building emotional resilience, or becoming more disciplined, is the process of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change itself. Up. It's not a metaphor or a slogan. It's a measurable biological fact. Your brain is a dynamic structure, constantly reorganizing its connections, actually lights up, strengthening some neural circuits while pruning others based on how you think, act, and live. But here's the truth that doesn't get emphasized enough. Up. Neuroplasticity is not guaranteed. It's not something you simply unlock by wanting to improve. It depends on your internal environment, your biology. Up. Your neurochemistry, your sleep, your focus, your movement, your nutrition, and critically, your exposure to substances like alcohol. Because alcohol lights up, even in seemingly moderate amounts, directly impairs the very mechanisms that allow your brain to rewire and evolve. To understand how alcohol compromises neuroplasticity, you first have to understand what plasticity requires. At a basic level, forming new neural pathways or strengthening existing involves repeated activation of circuits, the presence of brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, and coordinated neurotransmission, especially involving glutamate, dopamine, and acetylcholine. These chemicals help lay down new synaptic connections, reinforce pathways associated with learning, and prune away those that are unused or inefficient. Alcohol interferes with each of these critical components. First, alcohol suppresses the activity of BDNF. BDNF is like fertilizer for the brain. It promotes the growth of new neurons and synapses, particularly in areas like the hippocampus memory formation and the prefrontal cortex decision-making and focus. When BNF levels drop, it actually lights up. Your capacity to form new memories, adapt to change, or learn new patterns of behavior is diminished. You can still try but you're working against your own biology. It's like trying to build a house with wet wood and no nails. Second, alcohol blunts the activity of acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter essential for attention, alertness, and plastic changes in the cortex. Actually lights up. This matters because neuroplasticity doesn't happen passively. It happens through focused effort. Acetylcholine helps the brain mark certain experiences or stimuli as important. It flags what you should pay attention to and what to discard. Lights up. If your acetylcholine levels are suppressed, your ability to focus and encode new information is impaired. The brain gets noisy. Signal becomes indistinguishable from static. Next is glutamate, which is central to learning and long-term potentiation. The strengthening of synaptic connections that underlies plasticity. Glutamate lights up. Alcohol inhibits glutamate receptor activity, especially ND8 receptors, which are crucial for memory and synaptic change. Without these signals, the brain can't establish new wiring patterns with any lasting strength. This is why alcohol not only impairs memory in the moment, but stunts the deeper process of adapting behavior over time. And then there's dopamine. Dopamine is often thought of as the pleasure molecule, but its real role is in motivation, reward prediction, and reinforcement learning. Dopamine signals which behaviors are worth repeating and which are not. Alcohol distorts dopamine signaling by flooding the system, causing an artificial high, but eventually blunting the brain's natural dopamine pathways. This hijacks your brain's ability to reinforce the behaviors that lead to growth. Because now the reward system is tied to the substance, not to your actions, and actually your progress, not to your wins in the real world. Over time, these changes compound. The brain becomes less responsive to natural rewards, less flexible in response to change, and less capable of adapting to new challenges. The circuits that used to be responsive to learning, motivation, it actually lights up, or strategic thinking are now sluggish or unresponsive. Neuroplasticity is no longer a thriving engine, it's a stalled mechanism. You may feel stuck, lights up, not because you're lazy or undisciplined, but because the machinery needed to grow has been compromised at the biological level. And this isn't just about long-term heavy drinking. Research shows that even intermittent or moderate alcohol use, especially during periods of attempted learning or personal growth, can suppress the very neurochemical environment required for change. Sleep is not a passive state. It is a highly active, meticulously organized biological process that plays a foundational role in nearly every domain of physical and mental performance. It is during sleep that your body repairs itself, your brain consolidates memories, your immune system strengthens, and your emotional center recalibrates. High-quality sleep is the biological equivalent of recharging your brain's battery and updating its software. And yet, alcohol, despite its reputation as a relaxant or sleep aid, disrupts that system in ways that are measurable, predictable. It actually lights up, and profoundly damaging to your capacity to function at your highest level. Up. One of the most common misconceptions about alcohol is that it helps people fall asleep. It's true that alcohol can cause initial sedation, lights up. This occurs because alcohol enhances the activity of GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter that slows down neural activity and causes drowsiness. So yes, up. It may seem like you fall asleep faster after drinking, but that is only the onset of sleep. The deeper, more essential processes of sleep, the parts that determine how restorative it is, are severely compromised. Sleep is composed of several distinct stages. So up, light sleep, deep non-REM sleep, also known as slow wave sleep, and REM sleep, rapid eye movement, each serving critical biological functions. Up, alcohol disrupts the architecture of these stages in multiple ways. Most notably, it suppresses REM sleep, the phase of sleep where dreaming occurs, but more importantly, where emotional memory consolidation, neural recalibration, and creativity-enhancing processes take place. REM is where your brain files, processes, and organizes the experiences of the day so they become useful knowledge instead of random noise. When alcohol is in your system, your REM cycles are either delayed or fragmented. You might sleep for 7 or even 8 hours, but the structure of that sleep is broken. You wake up feeling foggy, emotionally irritable, or mentally unprepared. Not because you didn't sleep long enough, but because the quality of that sleep was shallow and disordered. This fragmentation leads to what's known as REM rebound, the body trying to compensate in the following nights by increasing REM intensity, often at the cost of stable sleep patterns. Alcohol also disrupts slow wave sleep, the deepest and most physically restorative phase of sleep. It's during this stage that your body repairs muscles, consolidates long-term memories, flushes out metabolic waste from the brain via the lymphatic system, and recalibrates your nervous system. Alcohol fragments this phase of sleep by increasing nighttime awakenings, micro-arousals, and causing more frequent transitions between light and deep sleep. This means your body's repair processes are constantly being interrupted, resulting in persistent fatigue, slower recovery from training, and weakened immune response. Another major impact of alcohol on sleep is related to core body temperature. High-quality sleep requires a drop in body temperature. Alcohol, however, lights up, disrupts thermoregulation. It causes blood vessels to dilate, increasing heat loss initially, but then triggers instability in the body's internal temperature regulation, which leads to mid-night wake-ups and difficulty maintaining restful sleep. Lights up. This subtle elevation in body temperature may not always cause full awakenings, but it degrades sleep depth. Lights up, leading to more time spent in non-restorative light sleep stages. In addition, alcohol's impact on breathing during sleep is significant. It relaxes the muscles in the upper airway. Lights up, increasing the risk of snoring and obstructive sleep apnea, even in individuals who don't normally experience those conditions. This further fragments sleep and reduces oxygen delivery to the brain, which compromises cognitive performance the next day and increases inflammation systemically. On a neurochemical level, alcohol blunts the natural rise and fall of neurotransmitters like adenosine, which plays a key role in sleep pressure, your brain's way of building up the need for sleep as the day progresses. Alcohol spikes adenosine rapidly, making you feel sleepy, but then causes it to crash prematurely. As a result, you may fall asleep fast, but wake up frequently during the second half of the night, often in a state of heightened stress or anxiety. This contributes to the experience of tired but wired, mentally exhausted, but unable to fall back into restful sleep. Over time, repeated alcohol use, especially before bed, leads to a state of sleep debt. This is not something you can simply catch up on over the weekend. It actually lights up. Chronic sleep fragmentation leads to diminished neuroplasticity, reduced attention span, elevated cortisol levels, and decreased ability to regulate emotions and make sound decisions. Your ability to learn to control impulses, to stay motivated, and even to experience joy is all filtered through the lens of your sleep quality. When alcohol is a recurring factor, that lens becomes distorted, dull, and narrow, cutting off access to your brain's higher capabilities. Dopamine is often misunderstood. Lights up. It's not simply pleasure molecule, as it's commonly described. It is the currency of motivation. It is the chemical signal your brain uses to mark something as important, worth pursuing, or rewarding. It drives you toward goals. It propels behavior up. It reinforces learning and tells your brain, that was good. Do it again. Every time you engage in a productive activity, completing a workout, up, solving a difficult problem, connecting deeply with someone. Dopamine is at work, encoding that moment as meaningful and encouraging repetition. But like all finely tuned systems in the brain, dopamine signaling is delicate. It has a baseline, your normal up, resting level of dopamine, and it fluctuates based on behavior, environment, and physiology. Healthy behaviors produce moderate, the lights up. It transient spikes in dopamine that are followed by a return to baseline, sometimes even dipping below it before rebalancing. Up, that dip is part of what keeps the system in check, helping your brain maintain a sustainable sense of drive without overstimulation. Alcohol hijacks the system. When you consume alcohol, it creates an unnaturally large spike in dopamine up, particularly in the brain's reward pathway, the mesolimbic system, including the nucleus accumbens and ventral tegmental area. This spike is not tied to an earned achievement or a meaningful effort. It's chemically induced. The brain receives the message, this is important, up, this is good. We want more of this, but there's no external accomplishment to match the internal reward. It's empty validation, a counterfeit signal. And because the brain is adaptive, constantly monitoring its environment to stay in balance, it begins to adjust up. It senses that dopamine levels are being artificially elevated, so it responds by reducing natural dopamine production and downregulating dopamine receptors up. The result is a decreased sensitivity to dopamine over time, things that used to feel rewarding. Exercise, conversations, personal wins, meaningful work don't hit with the same emotional impact anymore. The baseline drops. You need more stimulation to feel the same sense of satisfaction up. This is where the trap of dependency begins. Alcohol now becomes one of the few things that reliably elevates your dopamine levels up, but with diminishing returns. The first few drinks may have brought a sense of relief, pleasure, or social ease. But over time, lights up. It takes more alcohol to achieve the same effect because the brain is less responsive. This is tolerance up. But what's more damaging is what happens between drinking episodes. With natural dopamine levels suppressed, you experience lower mood, lower motivation up, and a diminished capacity to feel joy from normal life activities. This isn't weakness, it's neurobiology. The brain is following its programming, trying to balance the system in the face of repeated overstimulation. But in doing so, it creates a state of emotional and motivational flatness, lights up. And in that flatness, the temptation to drink again grows. Not necessarily to feel amazing, but just to feel normal again, up. The brain begins to equate alcohol with emotional equilibrium. That's the essence of psychological dependency. Up, the substance isn't just a want. It becomes a perceived need, hardwired into your internal feedback loop. As this loop strengthens, up, your behavioral patterns change. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term planning, starts losing influence over the reward circuitry. The limbic system, driven by cravings and short-term gratification, takes over, up. Your ability to weigh long-term consequences against immediate desires weakens. This is why people can intellectually know alcohol is harming them, yet still feel compelled to reach for it. It's not a failure of willpower. It's a biologically reinforced loop between stimulus and response. Worse still, up. Because dopamine also plays a major role in learning and memory, the brain starts linking alcohol to specific emotional and environmental cues, a time of day, up, place, a stir, a celebration, or even a social ritual. These associations become hardwired through repeated exposure, and over time, it actually lights up. They turn into behavioral triggers. You may find yourself reaching for a drink not out of desire, up, out of pattern, because the brain has encoded the behavior so deeply that it becomes automatic. The human brain is a master regulator, up. At any given moment, it's processing internal and external signals to determine how you feel, what you focus on, and how you respond, up. This emotional regulation system is essential for maintaining balance under stress, for making sound decisions under pressure, and for staying composed when life becomes unpredictable. It allows you to delay gratification, control impulses, up, and interact with others with empathy and clarity. And at the heart of that system are structures like the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex up, and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, all of which are deeply impacted by alcohol consumption. Alcohol interferes with these regulatory systems in a deceptive way. In the short term, it can feel like a relief. You drink, lights up, and the edges of stress begin to soften. Social anxiety quiets down, racing thoughts slow, and a temporary sense of calm takes over. Lights up. But that calm is not real regulation. It's chemical suppression. It's a numbing of the very circuits that you need to train, not bypass. Lights up, in order to handle life with resilience and control. And the more you reach for alcohol to manage stress, the more your brain loses its ability to regulate naturally. Actually lights up. One of the most immediate ways alcohol increases anxiety is through its effect on GABA and glutamate. Up, the brain's primary inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmitters. Alcohol enhances GABA activity, which is why it initially produces relaxation. Up, but to maintain homeostasis, the brain reduces GABA sensitivity and increases glutamate receptor density. Once the alcohol wears off, there is a neurochemical rebound. GABA activity is too low, glutamate is too high, and the result is hyperexcitability, restlessness, and anxiety. Up. This is why many people experience a spike in anxiety the day after drinking, often referred to as the anxiety effect. Up. But this rebound isn't just a one-time phenomenon. With repeated exposure, these shifts begin to recalibrate your brain's default stress response. Up. The amygdala becomes more reactive. The prefrontal cortex, your internal regulator, loses some of its control over emotional outbursts and irrational fears. Up. The HPA axis becomes hypersensitive, flooding your system with cortisol more easily and keeping you in a low-grade state of fight or flight. You begin to feel less grounded, less calm, and less capable of managing daily stressors without overreacting. Up. This state of chronic dysregulation affects more than just your inner emotional world. It impacts how you relate to others. Lights up. It becomes harder to stay patient in conversations, to think clearly under pressure, or to hold space for other people's emotions. The bandwidth you would normally use to navigate life strategically gets consumed by the effort to manage internal turbulence. And in this compromised state, it actually lights up. The temptation to reach for alcohol grows, not because you're seeking a high up, but because you're seeking relief from the very instability the substance helped create. Furthermore, alcohol disrupts the neurobiology of emotional memory. Up. Emotional experiences are encoded through a dance between the amygdala and the hippocampus. Alcohol interferes with this process. Up, leading to incomplete or distorted emotional memories. This creates confusion and difficulty processing past experiences. You may feel emotionally off but not be able to explain why. This is not just psychological, it's biological disorientation caused by impaired encoding and recall of emotional information. Sleep. Up, which is critical for emotional regulation, is also affected by alcohol, compounding the problem. Up. Poor sleep intensifies amygdala activity while decreasing the functional connectivity between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. When these regions are not in sync, you become more reactive and less able to pause before responding. Emotional volatility increases. Up. The smallest stressors can feel overwhelming. You begin to operate from a reactive state instead of a grounded one. Social comparison and self-perception are also influenced. Alcohol blunts serotonin signaling, a neurotransmitter crucial for mood regulation, confidence with actually lights up, and social bonding. With lower serotonin activity, negative self-talk increases. You become more self-critical. Lights up. More prone to feelings of inadequacy or failure. The highs you experience while drinking contrast sharply with the emotional lows that follow. Up, and that contrast reinforces a cycle: drink to feel better, crash afterward, and then drink again to escape the crash. Up. What begins as a tool for social ease or stress slowly becomes a barrier to emotional strength. Up. The brain's ability to regulate emotions is not plastic, but that plasticity can move in either direction. With repeated alcohol use, up, it shifts toward instability. The wiring that supports clear, calm, and balanced emotions becomes weaker, while the circuits that promote reactivity, lights up, impulsiveness, and internal codes grow stronger. The human brain is not static. It changes over time in response to your behaviors, your choices, your environment, and your internal chemistry. Up. This remarkable adaptability is known as neuroplasticity, the ability of the brain to rewire itself based on what it experiences. Every habit you form, up, every emotion you repeat, every substance you use leaves a structural and functional imprint on the brain. When it comes to alcohol, lights up. That imprint is not neutral, it's corrosive. Long-term alcohol use doesn't just affect how you feel or how you think temporarily. Up. It reshapes the physical structure of your brain. This is not metaphorical, this is literal. Repeated exposure to alcohol can lead to brain shrinkage, a deterioration of white matter, loss of gray matter volume, and disruptions in neurocircuitry that are responsible for memory, decision-making, learning, and emotional control. One of the most affected regions is the prefrontal cortex, the area right behind your forehead. Lights up. This is the executive center of the brain. It's responsible for impulse control, judgment, planning, reasoning, and regulating emotions. A chronic alcohol use diminishes the volume and thickness of this region. In functional terms, this translates to decreased ability to weigh long-term consequences, impaired decision-making, lower willpower, and greater susceptibility to cravings and compulsive behavior. When the prefrontal cortex weakens, you don't just make worse decisions, you feel less in control of yourself. Another region profoundly impacted is the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub. This structure is critical for forming new memories and integrating them into your broader sense of self. Long-term alcohol exposure is neurotoxic to the hippocampus. It shrinks the volume of this region, reducing its ability to process and store information effectively. This is why chronic drinkers often experience memory blackouts, forgetfulness, and confusion. These are not isolated glitches. They are signs of deeper structural impairment. Beyond the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus, alcohol also disrupts the white matter tracks that connect different parts of the brain. Lights up. White matter functions like the electrical wiring of your neural network. It allows different regions to communicate efficiently, integrating your thoughts, lights up, and actions. Chronic alcohol consumption leads to degeneration of these pathways, reducing cognitive speed, impairing coordination, and making it harder to maintain focus over long periods. Your brain becomes slower, more disorganized, less capable of handling complex or novel tasks. Lights up. The cerebellum, a region located at the back of the brain, is also affected. While often associated with movement and balance, lights up. The cerebellum plays a vital role in attention, timing, and fine motor control. Long-term alcohol use can cause cerebellar atrophy, leading to coordination problems, slower reaction times, and difficulty managing even routine tasks that once felt effortless. At the cellular level, alcohol damages neurons by increasing oxidative stress, disrupting mitochondrial function, and triggering inflammation in the brain. It interferes with the production of neurotrophic factors, particularly BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, lights up, which are essential for neurogenesis and the survival of existing neurons. Without adequate BDNF signaling, the brain's ability to repair itself or adapt to challenges is significantly impaired. Perhaps most dangerously, lights up. Alcohol alters the reward and habit-forming centers in the brain, especially the striatum and the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. These systems are designed to promote learning and reinforcement of beneficial behaviors, lights up. But alcohol rewires them to favor immediate gratification over delayed rewards. The longer alcohol is used, the more entrenched these changes become. Drinking starts as a choice, but eventually becomes a neural bias. The brain leans toward it as the default response to stress, boredom, or discomfort. The behavior becomes automatic, no longer filtered through rational thought. In adolescence and early adulthood, when the brain is still developing, alcohol is particularly damaging. It disrupts critical periods of brain growth, impairing connectivity and setting the stage for lifelong cognitive deficits. But even in adulthood, the damage compounds over time. Structural MRI studies have shown that the brains of long-term alcohol users consistently display reductions in volume and connectivity compared to non-users. These changes correlate with diminished IQ, reduced memory capacity, lower emotional resilience, and a compromised sense of identity and purpose. And these structural changes do not always reverse when drinking stops. Some brain tissue may regenerate over time, and neuroplasticity can offer recovery. But depending on the duration and intensity of alcohol exposure, some damage may be permanent. The cost of long-term alcohol use isn't just temporary discomfort. It's the reshaping of the very organ responsible for your thoughts, your dreams. It actually lights up your values and your ability to become who you are meant to be. Memory is not just about remembering facts or recalling names. It actually lights up. It's the foundation of identity, learning, and progress. Everything you know, every skill you've mastered, lights up, and every lesson you've internalized is stored in a vast neural network shaped by experience, repetition, and emotional relevance. At the center of that network is the hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure in the medial temporal lobe responsible for forming new memories